What's going on, everybody? It's Pete Toll, aka PT Sports 84, back with another NBA 2K25 video. This time, I wanted to make a quick video based off my guy Hoodie Pap 22's video on kind of the explanation of shot tendencies and touch tendencies, just kind of why they are the way they are. A lot of factors kind of go into it now versus a couple years ago, as 2K changed some things under the hood that we cannot really kind of change a lot on our end as a user. Why 2K kind of made the decision to go into a different direction with some of the tendencies and some of the other things that I'll talk about in a minute that they coupled with the tendencies is because it allows kind of teams to, I want to say, better replicate what the top tier guys on each team are doing. It doesn't really help. Actually, really, it hurts the lower role player guys or the mid tier um, role players, secondary, third options more so than the top tier options. The design was built more towards the top tier guys to get those superstars playing, more so because now more than ever, players are playing more online and those types of things rather than offline and just against an AI simulation based on the data. That doesn't mean that, oh, I play online or I play offline all the time. That's not what I'm saying. Based on 2K's data, more players are playing online rather than just playing against the CPU offline. So in order to get the tendencies of, those superstar players up and basically on quick moves and things like that, you're going to get somebody like an Embiid or a, Tyrese Maxey or Paul George. I'll use the Sixers as an example here since I have them pulled up. This is the default roster, by the way. To have those replicated a little bit better, they kind of up the stars of the other teams. Now, with that said, there's other factors, like I said, that go into it. First, a lot of the tendencies are built off the year before's data. So if you see someone like a Paul George here, it's basically built off the year prior's data. Now, there are updates during the year, so don't get me wrong. Don't slander 2K. Don't sit there and say, oh, they don't update anything, because they do. It's not a ton of tendency updates just because of that's kind of the way that the dev that's in charge of the tendencies likes it. Just because if there's radical change to the roster, then there has to be radical change to the play types. There has to be radical change to the playbooks, and a lot of things can get out of whack really quickly with the wrong change. So you want to make sure that you're making a good baseline change that's not going to dramatically change the game. The other thing that people don't realize, and I see this so many times, users that change the player tendencies also go in and change the sliders to replicate their changes for a more effective gameplay. That is not how 2K works. 2K wants to baseline their tendencies based off of what they have under the hood as a default all-star, superstar, Hall of Fame, pro, rookie sliders with no changes in between. That does not mean you don't tweak the coach settings when you go into the game. That doesn't mean that you can't change sliders, but for the basic overall concept of the tendencies, you want to have them built off of the default rosters the best you can. Obviously, if you build them off the default roster, default sliders, I should say, you're not going to get the most effective gameplay that you could have gotten if you changed them. Yes, that's true. But for the sake of argument, 2K is going to say, okay, these tendencies were built off what? A custom slider that not everyone can use out of the box. They may not know how to go download custom sliders. So you want your sliders to be at default while you're playtesting the tendencies and try to get them close. You're never going to get them 100% on sim stats and gameplay stats. You're just not going, it's not possible. The coding under the hood does not make it possible for both. Now you can get close in some areas, just not 100% replication. Now, specifically with the 76ers shot and touch tendencies. Obviously, we know Joel Embiid is their number one option when healthy. Now, if you know anything about the 76ers, you know this year that their number one option was Tyrese Maxey. And why was that? Because of injuries to Joel Embiid and injuries to Paul George. Now, factoring that in, you also have to look at where 2K stands. When they put the game out in September of 2024, everybody on this roster was essentially going to be healthy. They thought Embiid was going to come in. Yeah, some minor injuries here and there, like there always is. No one could have predicted Paul George was going to get hurt the way he did. So, in essence, Joel Embiid would have been the first option. Paul George and Tyrese Maxey would have split second and third options depending on the night. So that's how 2K designed the shot tendencies here. Embiid gets most of the shots. Maxey kind of follows suit, and then Paul George fits in as well. Now, you also have to remember when you're looking at the roster as it stands today, this was not the roster on opening night. Lonnie Walker was overseas. Jalen Hood-Schifino was on the LA Lakers. And Jared Butler, I believe, if I remember correctly, was on the Wizards. You had Quentin Grimes over on Dallas. So you had a lot of these guys not on this particular roster. Now, that doesn't give any excuse for Jalen Hood-Schifino's shot tendency to be that high, because it wouldn't have been that high even if he was on the Lakers. There are some things missed when it comes to the role players. I'm not even going to ignore that, but that comes from not having consistent tendency updates throughout the season based on productive data. Like, if it was me and I was looking at the tendencies, I would do a year-end review, and then I would do a close as I could to the start of the season before 2K came out for the day one patch. I would look at how the rookies are integrated and how the free agency pool of players goes to what teams and things like that, how it's kind of predicted on paper where those guys fit in, and then adjust accordingly. And that's what you put as a day one roster update. And then during the season, you're compiling data. So somewhere around the All-Star break, or shortly, maybe even before that, you have one tendency update that updates some of the shot profile tendencies, touch tendencies, and things like that. That's where you kind of go that route. And then at the end of the year, because so many of the role players step into prominent roles because of rest for the star players, that's when you can get a better idea of where those limited rotation players or guys at the end of the bench that might get a chance, those guys fit in. And you tailor it not just based off of what their production was as far as being a 2 or 3 option with injuries, but where they would tailor in based on shots per minute or something like that if you look at the stars. So like Hood-Schifino would probably get like a 50 in shot tendency for me, just because he's not going to take a ton of shots there. So if you're looking at it overall, how I look at 2K's overall shot tendencies and touch tendencies, it's kind of like a mixed bag. You have to have it just right across the board. So the shot tendency couples in with the touch tendency, and then these individual tendencies. As everybody knows, I've gone over in other videos which ones are gameplay and which ones aren't. You really want to focus on the spot up tendencies here. These T/ tendencies in the middle, like right center, right, these are all simulation based. The ones you want to keep an eye on. So like shot 3 tendency is a sim stat. Mid here is a sim stat. Under is a sim stat. Close is a sim stat mixed with, some of these are gameplay as well. So like under, close, mid, and 3-point do have an effect on gameplay as well, but they also trigger sim stats. So you have to multiply them in order to effectively trigger both areas of sim and gameplay to get better results. Your obvious high of a cap is 99. I personally, just my personal preference, I don't like having guys at 99 because then that's going to negate so many shots for, like Embiid at 99 is going to negate so many shots for Maxey and Paul George. I would go, me personally, my top range would be 95. And you're going to say, well, what's a 4-point difference? Well, that's calculated different when you look at how everything else aligns here. So there's a lot of things that you have to balance when it comes to this. And it's not easy. And it's, based on where 2K is in their development cycle, they haven't advanced past their initial concept of tendencies enough to where they can get a great grasp on working with the engineer to have full analysis of what exactly the scaling is at a top range and a mid range and a minimum range. They can guess, and everybody that's testing the tendencies, whether internally or externally, can have an idea, and everybody's going to have different opinions. The biggest thing I can say that I would love to see in the future is the engineer who helped build the tendencies works hand in hand with the person that is working on the tendencies and says, look, this is what the scale is. This is your maximum. This is your minimum. And then it's up to the person that's working to input the tendencies to find the data that correlates with that scale. If you know the scales, you can easily find the data. The problem is you get a shot close tendency, and then that has to balance with the floater tendency, and so like those branching together can change a whole shot profile for someone like a Trae Young who shoots a lot of floaters, or Jalen Brunson who shoots floaters, versus someone like Maxey who doesn't shoot as many as them. So it's just crazy. And the other thing is like mid-range being extremely high, especially for the spot up mid-range. This isn't the 90s basketball or early 2000s. The guard and wings are not shooting spot up mid-ranges. They're coming off of screens in a mid-range if you're, pulling up or things like that. That's a whole different tendency. So you want to have the spot up tendency for guards and wings pretty much close to zero. Obviously, if you go to zero, that means if they catch it in the mid-range, they're never going to shoot it. Like, that's where you got to be careful. So I always go down to like a 1 if possible. It just totally depends on the player. Big men, guys that stretch the floor that are bigs, you want to have, in a better range of kind of where it is right now. Also, with the spot up threes really quickly, if you have anybody over 50 that is a point guard, like Maxey for spot up 3 right here, has a 95. Have you ever seen that where they dribble around and then all of a sudden they jack like a fadeaway three, or they just shoot one out of nowhere? Because that happens a lot, and that's because of the spot up three tendency being so high. It's not as it looks on paper where it's like, hey, if they're spotting up from three out on the perimeter based on a broken play and a pass, that's not quite how it works. Yes, that comes into play, but the off-balance jacking of threes also happens. And I don't know if that's a coding issue or just an animation issue, but that's what happens when you have point guards, especially with the spot up three over 50. Now, you also have to take into account, going back to the shot versus touch tendency, it all depends on who's on the floor. So say Embiid is on the floor, and then you bring in Jared McCain, you bring in Eric Gordon, you bring in Quentin Grimes, and Yersan Yabusele. Who do you think out of those are going to get the most shots? It's going to be Embiid. He's the focal point of the offense. So you have to keep in mind also what other options those guys would be in the offense. If you were looking at a lineup built, say a starting lineup, let's just say, for example, you have Embiid, Maxey, Paul George. That's your three big, guys in the lineup, three scoring options. You then bring in Quentin Grimes as the two guard. And let's go for size purpose. Let's go Yabusele. We'll have McCain and Oubre come off the bench. Okay, so if you have that lineup based on that pecking order, Embiid would be your first option, of course. Maxey and George, as I said, would be the second options. Then, so that's three options right there. Your fourth option is likely Quentin Grimes on some catch and shoots, things like that. And then Yabusele gets, putbacks and some hustle stats, things like that. Now, looking at Yabusele specifically, this data is based off of his time with Boston. He did nothing when he was with Boston. I shouldn't say nothing because every NBA player does something. But he didn't do anything offensively that he did this year in Boston. That's a better way to put it. Quentin Grimes in Dallas didn't get many shots. Why? Because he played with a ball-dominant Luka Doncic. It was catch and shoots. In Philly, a lot more opportunities there. So, with those opportunities, now you would say, okay, his shot profile should go up for next year. His touch tendency should go up for next year. Now, with the shot and touch tendencies, these are also based on how often, when a play breaks down, especially with the shot tendency, how often is that player willing to shoot if they catch something, especially when a play breaks down. And what you'll find out with 2K, as I talked about at the beginning of the video, they have branched in not just with tendencies, but the freelance offenses, and a lot of it is hard-coded. So in order to fix that, your hard coding, you have to go in to the playbooks. You can basically download a playbook by loading the playbook here. You can find out how to get, quality playbooks, or mix and match your own. So you want to be able to have custom playbooks, because if you go by 76ers playbooks, or let's say Dallas's playbook, for example. Let's use Dallas because that's the best example I can give here. If you're using Dallas's playbook, all these plays essentially are built for Luka Doncic. No one in the world saw Luka getting traded to the Lakers. So these are going to be outdated plays that now, as a point guard in the system, Kyrie Irving is going to get every one of those plays hard coded into him. And he's going to play totally different with tons and tons of shots. Anthony Davis is the second option instead of the other way around. So you would have to rebuild that entire profile of the playbooks to get rid of that hard coding of tendencies. Let me go back to the tendencies here. So if you're looking at the tendencies here, look at this. 95 touch for Kyrie, 85 shot, 80 and 90 for Anthony Davis. That tells you right there that Anthony Davis would have been the second option. Kyrie would have been the first option. That's not true. Kyrie played off of Luka, but because they left this so high, because he was playing with Luka, who has 99-99, now you never changed Kyrie when the trade happened. Kyrie's going to take majority of the shots. You have to tailor it to your roster. Brandon Williams here should in no way have a shot tendency of 80 when you have someone else like a PJ Washington or other guys. There's not really many scorers. Like one that stands out dramatically is Max Christie. He should get upped on the shot tendency. Gafford goes up a little bit. Marshall goes up. But you got to base this off of the season. And that's where the disconnect is with a lot of people that review the tendencies. They're looking at, well, this shouldn't be because I'm looking at the data for this year. You can't do that because 2K, think about it. 2K releases in September. You have October, November, maybe December. When they come back after Christmas break, it's on to the next game. You only have 9 total months to build a completely new game with new features, new data, and all kinds of changes needing to be made. That's a quick turnaround. I don't know many people that work many jobs that could get something done in such a quick turnaround and have it year after year after year after year. It's a lot of pressure. I was under that pressure at one time, and it's a lot. You could say what you want. Oh, I can come in, I can fix this. I thought that too. I thought I could come in and fix the world, and then you have to answer to people. You have to consider under the hood changes being made on the fly. You have to wait for answers that you may not have the time to wait on because you need to have something completed. Then you have to also factor in, like I said, free agent additions, injuries, things like that you can't account for. So when you're making a roster, if you're 2K and you're making these tendencies in the offseason, or the season before, you're accounting for the data that if every player on this team is healthy, how can I stack this team to best replicate what I think, based on stats from the year before, would replicate to a new game. Then you're not even factoring in the rookies and what impact they could make. No one in the world knows what kind of impact those rookies could make. Let's take Dallas and Cooper Flagg, for example. Cooper Flagg could come in and average 14 points and 5 rebounds. Great. That's solid, but that's not a superstar as the number one pick. But if you put him in the game and you have him at 80 and 85 for shot tendency and touch tendency, on the default roster, Kyrie is going to be injury-free until that first roster update comes out and he is injured, because obviously he's out for most of the considerably amount of the season next year. So Anthony Davis would get the first amount of touches, then Cooper Flagg, then probably Clay, PJ Washington, those guys, if the roster stays the same. They'll have a point guard in there, whether it's Chris Paul, Lonzo Ball, whoever they go get as a stopgate, Tyus Jones as a point guard until Kyrie's ready. So you have to factor all of those things in. So having Cooper Flagg at, say, like an 85 for shot tendency and touch, he's going to jack a lot of shots. So that 14 and 5 is going to get increased to 19 and 7 in the game, and people are going to be like, this is way off. This isn't even close to this. It's guesswork. You're basically guessing where guys would be put in. Now, if you overall look at everything, this takes forever to go through every one of these tendencies and get it just right. And you're not going to get it 100%. I can 1000% guarantee, based on default sliders, you are not going to get these effectively 100% right. The key is getting it as close as you possibly can to what you feel like for your gaming experience can replicate gameplay on default sliders the best. That is the key and what so many people miss. Oh, I did custom sliders and look how great the gameplay plays. Guess what 2K is going to do? Oh, let me look at this. Oh, custom sliders, don't even bother. Click, and they click off of it. The key is if you build the tendencies off of the default sliders and you can get it close, you might get your work seen by 2K to the point where they might tweak some things. Because we're all playtesters, essentially, for the data that 2K needs, whether you believe that or not. Because the data that is received by 2K is what they have to go off of for the next game cycle, whether that's online or offline. I always tell people the most important tendencies that you can make change-wise to not drastically kill the gameplay on default sliders is change the shot tendency, the touch tendency, all of your shot profiles based on data. Then the other one is this one right here. This pull-up mid has to drop. The pull-up 3 has to drop. These two are killing gameplay right now. There's no way in the world that when a play breaks down, Klay Thompson is driving and pulling up from mid-range 99% of the time. So basically, if he gets the ball, he's never going to make it to the rim. He's either going to pull up from mid-range or pull up from 3. That leads to a lot of wild shots, and that's where, in my opinion, things have to be fixed. There's no way in the world that Anthony Davis is going to drive and pull up from mid-range 99% of the time. It's just not going to happen. These two are the killers of gameplay. Drive pull up 3, and drive pull up mid. You've got to get these on a respectable scale. Next, people don't realize this, but you have ISO tendencies. The ISO tendencies, if these are high 99% of the time against a poor defender, Anthony Davis is going to ISO? I don't think so. Kyrie, yes. Anthony Davis, no. And the lower the discipline is, when a play breaks down, are they going to go on their own and do their own thing? Yes. They're going to kind of just do their own thing. They're not going to adhere to the plays. The higher the play discipline is, the more they're going to adhere to plays. The other one, roll versus pop. Everybody has to be in this category correctly. Obviously, Kai Jones, you're going to want all your bigs to be high because you want to be able to catch lobs and things like that. Now, there's alley-oop pass and alley-oop, alley-oop, which is the alley-oop finish. Obviously, with your guards, you want to have the alley-oop tendency be higher. I don't know in what world that Jaden Hardy is going to throw tons of alley-oops, but that's okay. Where is Kyrie Irving? Kyrie, look at this. Kyrie Irving is almost never going to throw an alley-oop pass at 15. He is now the point guard on the team. You have to adjust that to throw alley-oops. He has the same alley-oop tendency as Klay Thompson and PJ Washington, who are wings. Those have to be adjusted. You also have to look at attack strong versus dish to open man. When they drive to the basket, are they looking to attack or are they looking to dish the ball off? Obviously, your passers, you want to have higher in this category as the pass first guys. If you have a guy that basically is not a is not someone that finishes at the basket a ton, you can lower this down. Like Dante Exum's not driving to the basket a ton. So this is a perfect example. His pass is higher than his finish. That's good. His alley-oop pass is up. Like that's actually well executed in the grand scheme of things. Now, spot up versus cut, transition. This is where they're going to go in transition, whether they cut to the three-point line for a shot or they drive to the basket. I don't understand this here. You got Derek Lively running to the three-point line 40% of the time. This should be a 0. He should be where Gafford is. Unless you're shooting threes, like there's potential that PJ Washington does go to the corner, that's fine. But there's no reason that Derek Lively should be running to the corner on a fast break. Those are the things that have to be fixed. The other thing, post-up tendencies. Guys aren't posting up like they did in the past. You got to lower these down. Your post guys are Jokic, Embiid, like those kinds of guys. Everybody else should be lower down. There's a significant gap with posts up compared to other teams. Like, that's where Embiid should be. But there's no way in hell Andre Drummond should have a 65 post up. Andre Drummond basically catches the ball off a rebound and puts it back. Sometimes he rolls to the basket a little bit, but he's likely not going to get the ball a ton anyway because he's not a roll guy. There's no way he should have ISO anything. Drummond's not ISOing anybody. He never has. Like, those are the things that have to be touched up overall. You want to also look at your tendencies here, floaters. You want to make sure that your bigs have at least a little bit of a floater because it's kind of that shot put, push shot kind of thing, versus someone like Trae Young that I talked about earlier. Perfect, 95 floater. Great. Karis LeVert should not have 55 floater. Should not have Georges Niang with a 40 float. Like, those are the ones that have to be touched up. Not everybody's going to be perfect. When I worked on tendencies, I missed a lot of stuff. It's a learning experience, and everybody thinks they can do it, but they can't. And so, like, what I talked about earlier, the alley-oop tendency. This is based on guys that catch alley-oops. For bigs and wings that catch lobs, you have to have this scale over 70. If you have it over 70, it's what triggers animations. Obviously, the big dunk guys that catch them a ton, you want to have high, closer to a 95 to 99 scale. That's just a fact. You need to make sure if you're having, say you have bigs on the roster that catch the alley-oops, you then have to go over to the alley-oop pass and make sure, like Trae Young's got 99 pass. That's fine. But you got to make sure other guys on the lineup have it as well. No way in hell should Dyson Daniels, who's a passing guard, have a 5 in alley-oop passing when he's with Capella and less than a Kongwu and Jacob Toppin. There's no way this should have made it through. Those are the ones that get missed that have to be caught in the grand scheme of let's go tendency by tendency and really scale the guys. What I would do is I break it up by all the guard tendencies, all the guards and wings and bigs. That's how you basically the 3 categories. And you tailor it based off of that in each thing. Really quickly, one thing that I don't think a lot of people know is that the drive pull-up 3 tendency helps with the handoff 3-pointers. So, the drive 3-pointers, so say, say Dyson Daniels has the ball here, and he's driving around on the perimeter because the play's breaking down. He hands it to Trae Young at the, with 8 seconds on the shot clock. Well, instead of Trae Young driving, Trae Young's going to jack that three up because he's going to look at it as a handoff 3-point situation. And for guys that have the handoff three play type, those are going to get magnified even more. So if you have a high tendency here plus the play type, that automatically guarantees you're going to jack that shot up. Now, coming off of screens, someone like a Klay Thompson, for example, when you're looking at the off-screen three here, that's perfect because that's how he shoots them. So you want it to be high for guys that shoot, not necessarily at a 99 because I think that's a little high, maybe a 95, but you want it to be high for the guys that shoot it. For the guys that don't, like there should be no way that Anthony Davis has a 45. He's not catching that off of a handoff and jacking a three. Like that should be lowered down. Those are the things that have to be tweaked overall for the tendencies. But in order to know that, you have to be able to play test the tendencies and really know how it correlates with gameplay. Then have that tendency engineer work with the elite gameplay developer and say, hey, these are what it is. These are where we've scaled it. All right, now you can tailor gameplay based on this. So that would be the most effective way to look at it. And then if you look at the last thing I want to touch on, going back to the post tendencies, so many people think, oh, well, I got Anthony Davis at 80 post up. That's fine. Well, it's not. You need to have it based on these values at a cap of 50. Like your highest rate is a 50 in each category, and you tailor from there. So if you want to have a guy with a post hook right, and that's what he shoots the most, you want to have that at a 50 and something else at like a 30 and scale down from there. How often he shoots it, you want to have, to where he's going to catch it in the post, say the clock's running down. You want to have, bigs with better ability to shoot in the post. Doesn't mean that they have to. Like, if you lower their post up, like there's no reason that Gafford should have a 99 post back down necessarily. Like, an aggressiveness to 75, like, to me that's a little high, but he also has a 10 post up tendency, which means he's not going to post up a lot. So 2K gets around it. Well, he's not going to post up anyway, so I'm not going to worry about the post back down or the post aggressiveness. Well, if he does catch it with the shot clock running down and he posts up, that means 99, basically there's a high chance with a 99 that he's going to back down and be aggressive and then try to score using one of these moves. When in reality, he is catching putbacks, rolls to the basket, things like that. So you just got to better tailor it to what you think that player plays like. There's a lot of variety that can happen here, a lot of things that can go wrong. You can have someone that comes in and thinks they're changing the tendency, so they change every single tendency across the board, and one thing could essentially break another if it's not tailored right to each thing. The other thing that people don't realize is the dunks with the driving dunk. That is just based on if it's animation based against the AI, how often are they going to dunk? Now, you want to have, obviously, standing dunk, you want to have guards down to 0 because they're not going to stand, do standing dunks. In my opinion, driving dunk should be tailored to guys that really dunk. So I would knock off 20 here for Kyrie Irving. I would knock him to a 50. Now you say, oh, well, does Kyrie ever dunk? Not really. Well, yes, but in order to trigger the dunk animation, you got to have it somewhere in there for it to happen at least every little bit of the time. Now, you could tailor that by saying driving dunks at a 50, but then all of his layups and things are at where are the layups? Let's see. Like a floater, hop, step, all of that stuff. All of this stuff right here would be higher. So that dunk tendency is never really going to trigger that much, but you still don't want it at a 70. Like, that's way too high. Klay Thompson at a 70 is way too high. Dinwiddie, 75, that's way too high. Then you got somebody like Brandon Williams at a 0 in both categories. Like, that's where the stuff gets missed. And that's where it could be updated better, in my opinion. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's saying anything has to be 100% perfect, but it could be scaled a little bit better. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a better idea on it. How I view, wrapping it up, the shot tendencies versus touch tendencies. Look at the overall roster. If you're editing it right now, a 2K25 roster for the off season, I personally would take someone like Dallas. I would essentially knock down Kyrie Irving -5 on each of these. Brandon Williams obviously needs to go down. Hardy goes down a little bit. But you also got to look at who's on the floor. So when Hardy's on the floor, Hardy's usually on the floor with a third string, unit or a bench unit. He's going to take a lot of shots. So it's not the end of the world here. When PJ Washington is on the floor, PJ Washington's the third to fourth option on the team, depending, if they were healthy, depending on who else is there. Same with Najee Marshall. Does Najee Marshall have a lot of scoring output when he's not on the floor with those guys? Yes. You could probably put him +5, but the touch tendency is also going to be how often they touch the ball within the offense. But then you have to look at, where does the touch tendency go in relation to what plays are ran? If there's a lot of isolation plays in their, if there's an isolation play in their play type, they're going to revert to looking at the isolation tendencies. Where does it fall into that versus other areas? Now, he's got 90 play discipline, which is good. Low ISO tendencies, I'd probably take these two to 0 and put this to 5. Only isolate if he has to. Where the problem lies right now is he's got 60 roll to the basket. The higher the value, the more they're going to roll. The less the value, the more they're going to pop. He's a shooter, or basically a wing that catches it and drives. He's not rolling to the basket. That 60's got to go to 0 or somewhere like in a 10 range. That would fix that right there and would allow him to shoot more shots. He's also got 0 transition 3-point spot up. He's going to go to the corner for a 3. At least at minimum have it at a 50, if not like 65. So that way you give him the range of, okay, he might pop to the corner, but depending on the transition, he might drive to the, roll to the basket to catch a quick, dunk. Like, those are the things that you have to keep in mind, and you have to go through every player and make your best decision you can make with those. Now, according to 2K's data, he's going to pull up a lot in the mid-range. Doesn't happen with him. You got to lower these. This is what's killing it right now. Then, going back to the rest of the team, Olivier Prosper barely shoots the ball. So he needs to be reduced. Caleb Martin is based on his stats in Philly and what he did last year. So obviously his touch tendency would go down. Gafford should increase because Gafford took a ton of shots within the offense based on roles and, things like that. Not drastic increase, but enough. Max Christie as well. Like, Kai Jones can go up slightly just because he was catching more lobs and things like that. PJ Washington, scoring option for Dallas. Klay should go down, in my opinion, slightly, just because he's not going to take as much shots. And, of course, like I mentioned, Brandon Williams gets quite a reduction with the shot tendency. You also want to look at touch tendencies. With guards, you don't want to have it super, super high if they're not an elite high 20s, low 30s scorer, because then they're going to take a ton of shots because the ball is going to be in their hands a lot. So then you run into the shot clock running down and shots get jacked at an alarming rate. So you want to be careful with that too. You'll get the one-offs like Cam Thomas here. Essentially, is a six-man, in my opinion. Takes a lot of shots, things like that. Like, that's not bad, but Tyrese Halliburton, see how they have his shot tendency a little lower? You could probably lower that -5 for the shot tendency and keep his touch tendency high. You don't want to have necessarily Siakam at a 90. That could probably go down 5. Things like that. Like, here's an example. Zion, it just depends on the offense how much he's going to touch the ball, because if healthy, DeJounte Murray would have been the point guard and the secondary ball handler would have been McCollum. So they're obviously going to touch the ball more, but Zion's going to get a lot more shot attempts. So that's how 2K looked at it there. Where 2K missed the mark necessarily is all the bottom end role players. They're all too high. There's no reason Jamal Cain, who's barely played in the league, should have a 75 touch tendency. Keon Brooks shouldn't have 70-70. Yes, he had some scoring output games, but just he's not like that. Those are the examples that have to be touched up. So if you're looking at the tendencies, those are the things you really want to look at. So hopefully this explained it a little bit better. You guys can get an idea of where things should be at. Like I said, this is just my opinion. Base your tendencies off the default sliders and adjust accordingly. Do not start tweaking sliders, then changing coach profiles, sliders, playbooks, play types, all this stuff, and then go back and say, well, I got the tendencies where they are. It's not going to work the greatest. Tweak your tendencies based on the default sliders. Then you can adjust the other things, and you're going to see better results, in my opinion. Hope everybody enjoyed this video. If you got a lot out of this, please consider a donation to the channel. Please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe. And please share this video so the info could be out to everyone who's always wondered about kind of where the tendencies are in relation to things. Hope you guys got something out of this video that's useful. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.